on the projector. What we've got coming up in class, I just always really like to do that, as much for myself as for anybody else. Okay, so, okay, so let's start by looking at the calendar and see what we have coming up. Right now, it's showing my other class, so we'll switch that out. Okay, so this week, you just turned in your framing lesson conversation. I haven't had a chance to grade that yet. That's my afternoon task. Okay, this week, we're talking about big reasons. I really like the stuff we're talking about this week because it's all about why arts integration works. We've already talked about a lot of things before, but these are some more really great ideas that are scientifically backed, that tell us what's going on in your brain with arts integration that helps you remember. And so you've got an article called 2 Big Reasons. Throughout this week, we're going to talk about those things I just mentioned. And at the end of the week, you're going to have your conversation about 2 big reasons. You're going to do your math activities that I posted last week for you. You have another one of those online quizzes about standards objective assessments. I think this one goes a little more into assessments. Again, this is a quiz format, but it's an assignment. So you're welcome to reach out to me with questions or if you don't understand something. And then check this out. Right here, this is the first group that are turning in their own videos or other documents to Padlet. Judith had some questions. Does it have to be a video? I'm going to be kind of lenient, but I want to feel like you are teaching us. So my videos, you really didn't see me and my face. You can make a video where it's just on your phone, like a selfie, and you're just teaching us. But if it requires that we look at images, or listen to music, or watch a video or something, you've got to include that as well. So anything that you need to teach us, you've got to include it in your post. I saw somebody was making kind of a cool, really simple website that had images and text for us to go through. That works too. It's completely up to you, but I wanted to include all the teaching resources that you feel like we should look at or engage with, and really that we should know what to do. And then remember, the activities should be really short and quick. Hopefully the ones I've been planning for you, have they been very long for you at home? Okay, short and quick. This is the kind of thing that you could drop in anywhere in a lesson, and it would be just a really cool, engaging activity to help kids get some ideas on what you're teaching. So if you have questions, this first group, social studies, as you're working on that, please come to me and let me know. You can email me anytime, and I haven't been amazing at keeping my office hours on Zoom, but I'm going to try really hard to do that. So you can drop in on Zoom in what says in the syllabus for when my office hours are. So you guys, you submit that by just uploading it to Padlet. Then I go to Padlet, check that it's there, and give you the grade in Canvas. As I was saying to Judith, if you're submitting something with lots of files and lots of links, you have to make like a new Padlet entry for each one. So if it's getting to be a lot, put those all into one document and submit the link to the document to Padlet. But if it's 2 or 3, then you can make multiple Padlet entries and just say, the title continued. The title continued, so we know it goes together. Just make it so that the people who are going to interact with your information know what's going on. I'm super excited to see what you guys create for these. So starting next week, for the rest of the semester, you won't have my activities anymore, but you'll have some from your peers, which will be really cool. Okay, so if we look, that's through the end of September and beginning of October. Let's go ahead and move into October and see what we have coming up. We still have reading and conversations, and you'll start turning in your support activities that you're doing with other people. But then starting about mid-October, you're going to start turning in or working on your own individual ICAP lesson plan. And so we're going to do a discussion where you come up with tons of ideas, share the ideas with the class, and then we give you feedback to help you pick your best idea. And then you'll have a rough draft. And then after the rough draft, we'll do an activity where you're working with a group to get feedback to improve your rough draft. Then you'll have a final draft. So that's kind of what we're going through in October, along with our continued readings and conversation groups and outside of class activities. Okay, so today we're going to talk about something that I absolutely love, called the studio habits of mind. I'm going to go to today in our module. For those of you who are at home, you can see I have a ton of documents here. The last 3 documents are the ones that we're going to be interacting with in class. I'm going to show you these first. Okay, so studio habits of mind. Let me find my purse. Okay. Were created by a woman named Lois Hetland, and she actually had a team of other people who worked with her to create the studio habits of mind. Let me open the document that I just downloaded. You guys, I don't know how to use this kind of computer.
It's down there at the bottom left.
Okay.
Yeah, just open.
Where? Up a little
There you
bit.
go.
What's that? This up a little bit. This.
There you
Thank you. I always use a Mac, and they just work really different. See, okay. So Lois Hetland is a researcher and an art educator. She taught art and music, and she knew deep in her heart that we learn so much when we learn through the arts. And you hear people saying, oh, studies always show that you learn best with the arts. And she recognized that a lot of people would say studies show, and they didn't know what those studies were. They really didn't know what the research was. And so she decided to do a study, and with this large team of other people, to find out what happens in an art class that may help people learn better or become smarter. And they didn't know what they were going to experience or find when they started this. But they just started observing arts classrooms all over the country and writing down what students were doing in the classrooms, what kind of thinking they were being asked to do, what was happening. And they found that there were 8 habits or ways of thinking that were happening very regularly in every single one of those classrooms. And so they decided to call those studio habits of mind. Studio is an art studio or an art classroom. What kind of habits of mind, ways of thinking, develop naturally when you're in an arts classroom? And they wrote all about them. And they say that none of them are more important or better than the others, but they all matter. And so what we're going to do right now, we're actually not going to look at this document, we'll look at this later, but I'm going to have each of you engage in an activity where you're going to learn about one or more of these studio habits of mind. And then you're going to share back to the class what that one was. Okay, so what I have for you is a little drawer. Pull these out and pass these out to you guys. Inside of the drawer, you're going to find a card like this. It says the name of the habit, or this one has 2 on it, and it has some little instructions on the back. And then everything you need to do it is in here. So you'll do that. You can do it on your own. Well, you'll do it on your own, but maybe you and the person next to you are going to do the same one. So I'm going to pass these out for you first. In fact, let's see, I have 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Perfect. Okay, we only need 1 stack. So I want you, as soon as you get it, you can pull it out and start reading through it and start engaging in the activity. And then I'm going to have a couple more things I need you to do. There we go.
Do you think and wonder, compare and contrast
We are looking
using the Venn diagram illustration, think about how you should use it.
This is what the people in the class are doing. So you can read through these, and if you have these materials, you can try 1 or 2 of these, or you can pick one and try it out, or you can just read through and come up with all of these. There are some additional documents, so see if you can work so sad. Yeah, now you start those. And you'll be able to tell from this document which one to open. Okay, you guys, we're going to do this for about 5 minutes, and I'm going to write a list on the board over here of things that I want you to be able to tell the class, okay? So you'll do your activities, and then you'll think on your own or talk to the people at your table about the list I'm putting on the board that you're going to report back to the class about, okay? All right, you can keep working.
Do my pictures?
suppose if they're like focused on like a human subject, they're really into like the coding.
It looks like
Oh, they are. Cause like
Yeah, it looks like
that
they're-
hat does not need that much
looks
detail.
like they're having
so-
fun. Like look at this
And
one.
the
His legs
dresses
like
are very
up and
like
his head like
fancy
twisted.
and stuff.
Is this one copied him? Are they like exactly the same? Because look at where he's like
Well, one's
Maybe
like
like
more
the
of a
exact
portrait,
same.
whereas one is
just like
staged.
opposite.
Yes, with like a dog and music and yeah. What about you?
It looks like there's
So I
a
think
lot of color
yeah, I
and
think
line,
they're-
a lot of
Is this a, like,
abstract.
is it a
And,
sculpture, like big like clay when she was painted?
See, they're both darker. They're different. This one is like the city.
Yeah, maybe
The lines are pretty different too, because that one doesn't really have like a straight like line, but like this one definitely does.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what it's called.
Point that draws you.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's probably,
Well,
that's probably
people, but
not
there's
just
no,
goofing
like,
off because it's the
line
exact same thing. So
down the
whatever they're
street.
dancing to has like a, yeah, or has like
Actually, it looks like a city though. Like that's exactly how it will look like.
Yeah, just blurry.
Yep. Yep. Very good.
and then, oh, let's talk about this one.
This is different. This is different.
About wine? It could be like, is it like sun, the sun going down or coming up? It's not bright, but it's not dark. Yeah. And the roosters there.
And this is at night.
Oh yeah, that's probably true.
It's prelude to a concert.
There's
Oh,
like
yeah.
birds in the background and birds on the circle on things.
I'm wondering what this pink thing is.
I like the sky.
That might be
I
the
know.
drink, yeah.
No, it's so weird.
So would you consider
What
those
is
the
this? Is that a
clouds?
bird?
And that's
Yeah.
like
The storm.
Oh, she's
swirls.
on.
Yeah.
She's
But like,
holding a
I would never
fan.
like a moon maybe.
Oh,
But I wouldn't paint like a sky like that myself. Like I wouldn't even think about it.
Especially when you
Got like a little
do
leaf.
everything like
Mhm.
normal down here, except for color. But
But
Oh,
she looks
Is it a
like
dress she's wearing or is it some weird, like,
maybe.
Or
I
is
don't
it- does it
know.
dress
I
on
just
top of that?
like that's weird,
like,
right?
what are they called?
It's very cool.
Underground.
1984.
I think it's, yeah, I think it's an actual dress.
This is the old. No, this is the
Maybe
oldest
it's
one.
not.
That's
Oh, I think
weird.
it might not.
years or 100 years.
1810. Oh my gosh, look
What
at
do you think is
her.
going on? She honestly looks like she's like passed out on
Okay, guys, pause for just a minute. When you are kind of done with your activity and talking to your group or thinking on your own, please be able to do all 5 of these ideas written on the board. You're going to present it to the class. Name the habit, describe it or them, explain the activity and how it demonstrates the habits you have. Tell us how you've experienced this in any activities in this class or in other art classes. And then finally, explain how this habit can help in other classes or in all types of learning. So that's what you're going to tell back to the class. Okay, you keep working. and over here, and then around this way. And so, just so that we can really be clear for people at home, can you come up to the front and tell us about it? And if you have more than one person in your group, nominate 1 or 2 people to come and talk, okay? But if you'll come on up and tell us what's the name of your habit that you talk about.
About using what you have to stretch your ideas and possibly stretch your confidence in the object you're working at.
And then you did reflect as well, is that
Yeah.
correct? Okay.
And there's reflect was just like questions that you could do on your piece of art. Like I made a sculpture and they said on the card like, what would you change or improve, or what could you do better, or what's going well, and you just kind of think back on the stuff that you did on the piece that you made.
Awesome. So what did your card tell you to do on for stretch and explore?
It said to create a sculpture with wire, beads, and other objects. Push yourself to experiment with the materials you're using. See what you can do. And I made this. I was gonna make a flower, and then I was like, no, that's just too easy. Because that's what I always do with stuff. So I was like, let's see what I can do. How odd I can make it.
So you really pushed yourself to
Yeah.
go a different direction. Awesome.
I was like, this is gonna look funny, but I'm okay with that.
Awesome. So can you run through anything else on here that you didn't cover?
No, I think that's everything.
Okay. So, well, have you experienced in this class or other classes where you had to push yourself and explore something new in an art form?
I think when I was an art major, I started using pointillism and I hated it at the beginning, but when I expanded on it, I liked it a lot more because it pushed me to think in a different aspect. And then I ended up discovering a different art form that I enjoyed.
Awesome. How do you feel like that could help kids if they practice it in an art project? How could it help them in other ways that they're learning?
I think that if they expand their interests, then they could find either an easier way to learn new things or a new way to enjoy themselves in their learning. So it could open up doors for them to enjoy science more or math more, instead of it just being the typical way of learning.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you very much. I have to say that I met Lois Hetland about 2 years ago. She gave a presentation about the studio habits of mind to principals up north. It was in Provo. And immediately, my mind just kind of expanded when I learned about this because I work with a lot of art teachers, and I think I talked before that just using the arts doesn't necessarily guarantee a good experience for children, right? But when you're thinking of doing high quality activities that we've talked about already, and then you think about how am I using these things, these studio habits of mind, how am I helping students think in this way, it can turn into a really amazing experience. I work with a lot of art teachers in Utah, especially in southern Utah, and some of them are fantastic and some of them are less great. And I feel like when you have this list, I could go to a teacher and say, are you encouraging your students to stretch and explore? Or are you giving them new things to push themselves in that maybe they haven't tried before? And that can be a great way for that teacher to improve. When you're doing an arts activity, are you having the kids sing songs that are already written every time and that's all of your music? Or are you stretching them to try new things in music? Or are you letting them try instruments or body percussion? Or are you having them move their bodies in new ways as they're learning a song? Then you're helping them stretch and explore. And then reflect. Obviously, you probably talk about reflection in all of your classes, but in the arts, a lot of times an art teacher spends all their time having their kids make something and then they move on to the next thing. But when you take the time to have the kids say, what do I like about this? What do I want to change if I did this again? Should I keep working on it and change it a little more? Then you're giving them a way of thinking about their own learning. What do I like about this paper that I wrote? Do I need to keep working on it? Am I ready to move on? Have I done this math problem correctly? Is there a different way to solve it? If they're thinking back and reflecting on what they do. So when we practice it with arts integration in your elementary classrooms, you're going to help them develop those ways of thinking about themselves and their learning that will transfer over into the other things that you're teaching them. Okay, let's have this group. Somebody or 1 or 2 of you come on up to the front and tell me You had understand art worlds, right? Okay. Understand art worlds. Is there a way to make this smaller? Yes. Okay.
So ours was understand art worlds.
Sorry.
It says learn about the history of art, see how artists today make their art, envision yourself as part of the global artist community, and understand the roles of artists, galleries, and museums.
So our activity was to compare and contrast two different photos or paintings and ask ourselves, what do we see, what do we think is going on, and what does it make you wonder, and then compare and contrast the two photos. Experience. Oh, we talked about how we, in our Art 1010 classes, I didn't take mine here, but she did. We talked about like the history of art and everything like that. And like I grew up going to art museums like the Getty, so I was constantly learning about artists and stuff like that.
We thought it was kind of cool because like on the back of the cards, it gives like more information about like the artist and like when it was, like these paintings were created and stuff. And so one of them was like in the 1940s, so we're like, oh, and they're like from Illinois, and so we're like, oh, that's like during World War II, and like kind of like, I think it was like 40 Woods, like around Pearl Harbor kind of a thing, and then another one was from
1860. So like in America that was like around Civil War, but and this one was in England, so it's like Industrial Revolution in England. So we kind of related it to history in that way.
Awesome, awesome. So how do you guys think this could help your learning in other classes? Or other subjects, or all learning?
I think like relating it to history, like you can study a work of art and then kind of relate it back to like what's going on in the world at that time. It kind of gives it like a little bit more of like, oh, what's when that happened? Like it gives it a little bit more of a reality.
Yeah, and connecting things, really integrating ideas. Okay, thank you guys. I have to say that I hope that you've been able to see in the activities that I've been having you do, the English and math and science activities you've done outside of class. In every case, I'm introducing you to a dance group or an artist or a musician, because I feel like when you're seeing what exists out in the real world, that can inspire you in what you're doing, and it also can give you new ideas and help you feel connected, I think. Connected to a time, place, history, past, present, other cultures. What I like about understanding art worlds is I can learn to interact as an artist with other artists. So it's not just learning about other artists that are famous. It's about myself. I'm an artist. When I create art or music or dance, I'm contributing to the art world, and my work may be similar or really different to what someone else has made. It also means other artists can be famous professional artists, but it could be my friend sitting next to me. It could be us talking about our artwork and sharing it with each other, which is really cool. So this to me is a huge one. So my daughter is teaching art at an after-school program, and today's her first day to teach all by herself. And she's going to have kids draw a picture of themselves and what they like and what they don't like. And that's kind of a thing that's going on around on Instagram with illustrators. It's called Meet the Artist. You draw yourself, likes and don't likes. And so she wants to have the children do that. And I said, you definitely need to show them real world examples. It can make them excited, make them feel like they're a part of something, and inspire them in what they do. And so that's what understanding art world is all about. But what I like about it is if a child, so often we don't think about what we own or what we experience being created by other people. So if you think about the pants I'm wearing, a designer designed the cut and the shape and the pattern, and then somebody made them, right? So if I see a work of art and I learn about the person and the place and the time, it opens my eyes to, if I see something else, I might wonder about who did it. My favorite educator of all time is Mr. Rogers, and he would always say, I wonder who made this book. I wonder who wrote it. I wonder who made these blocks that I'm playing with. He was always thinking about who was behind it. And I feel like if you're doing that with the arts, it can inspire a child to say, who thought of this math equation? What scientist experimented to figure out this kind of medicine? Or any of the other things you're learning about, it helps them think of the people behind it, which is really awesome. Okay, can you come up and share?
Okay, so with Envision, it's pretty much just planning out whatever you're gonna be doing. So like in this case, the artwork, to think about what colors am I gonna use, what props will I use, shapes, and so forth. And then with Express, it's just kind of about communicating your ideas, what you're thinking about in an artistic type of way. That was a little harder for me to understand. My activity was, we had to pick 3 prompts out of a box, and out of those 3, pick one that we would like to do. And I lost mine.
It's right there on the board.
Oh. I just picked, because it's easy, what do you wish you could eat today, and make artwork to show us. And to go along with Envision, I had to think about what steps I was going to do to create it. And it doesn't look like it, but I made a chicken taco with pico. I've been thinking about that all day, so it was actually really easy to come up with. So in this course specifically, just before I even did this project, I was already envisioning what I would do for my support activity. I was kind of planning where I would go to look for, you know, the objectives and standards and what kind of activities I would want to do with it. And I think it can be applied to other classrooms really easily, just planning out your assignments you're going to do for the week, or how you'll do it. Are you going to do it on Word or whatever?
Awesome, thank you. I agree incredibly. I found, surprisingly, that some people have a really hard time envisioning something. And if we go back to that page, it says, mentally picture the next steps in my work. Not just I can list them, but I can kind of see them in my mind and think it through. And that's a really important skill to have, and it's a really important skill to practice. So as you're helping students see something in their mind, and then try to create that thing, what they make probably won't match what they have in their mind, but that's where it's really cool, where you go back and forth between what am I able to do, what do I want it to look like. You can envision with not just visual art, obviously you can hear and try to envision what a song might sound like, how I might move my body in a dance, how 2 players on a stage might interact if you're doing theater. So this idea of being able to have this mental image and then try to create it is really important. We're going to talk about Envision more in our next class period. Did I tell you guys about the home remodeling show that I love to watch? I think it was my other class. So there was this lady, I love watching home remodeling shows, and this one lady was having a designer come in. They come in and say, here's your tile, here's your grout, here's what we're going to do for the flooring. And this lady was just so grouchy and so mean through the whole episode, and usually people are really excited. And at one point they installed something, but they didn't have the counters on, and the designer brought her in to show, and she said, you're trying to have me tell you my opinion before it's done. I can't do that. And she just was so mean. And what my husband said offhandedly was like, that woman is unable to envision. She could not see something. She had to see the real thing. And so, I mean, it's not probably hurting her in her life, but her life would maybe be more peaceful and calm if she was able to envision the future, envision plans. She was upset and unsettled through the entire episode because she was having a difficult time envisioning. So if you can help your students practice that quite a bit, it can help with their learning. And then obviously Express is a big part of the arts. And when we talked about high quality artistic activities, expression was one of those. If you're allowing a student to say something or put something of their own ideas into their work, it's really more high quality. So often children, they know they can talk, they know they can throw a fit, or they can show on their body or their face or the sounds that they make what their ideas and their feelings are. When you're showing them that they can create music or rhythm or move their bodies or make a work of art to show people their feelings, you're giving them another language that they can express with, which is really fantastic. Okay, this group.
So we had develop craft and engage and persist. And develop craft is like improve your art skills through practice, and engage and persist is, what it sounds like. When you engage, you are focused on your work, and when you persist, you stick with it even if the work gets hard. And so our activity, it didn't sound hard at first, but you had to start with the lightest part of what you're drawing and then make it the darkest that you could. And as I started going through it, I was like getting really impatient and just wanting to be done and stuff. And so you really had to persist to get it done. One way that I feel like I have experienced this is I did theater in high school, and like when I ended up being like a main character or something in a show, I really had to persist to memorize my lines, which could be really difficult and really frustrating sometimes, especially if you have like a really big monologue or something. And so I really had to persist and pay attention to what I was saying so that I could portray that character. And these can help in a lot of different areas, just because persisting in your work, I think, applies to all different school subjects, especially one that a student might struggle with. Like I struggled with math in school, and so the idea of persisting through even when it gets hard can be really helpful for that.
That's awesome. Thank you. And it's just like understanding art worlds, you might wonder how developing your craft could apply to other learning. So you engage and persist when you memorize your lines, but you're learning more about theater as you learn tricks to help you memorize your lines, right? And you have to learn about how to use your body, your voice, and where you go on the stage to show that character, right? So in music, it could be, I'm learning how to use my instrument, I'm learning how to care for my instrument. In art, I'm learning how to paint, how to use a brush, how to wash my brush, right? It's all of the sort of technical parts of art. And what's interesting is that so many people who are teaching the arts, whether it's a classroom teacher like you or an arts teacher, this is where they spend all their time. All of their time is just on helping the student learn the art form and how to do the art form. But how empty is that if we compare to adding all of these other ways of thinking, pushing yourself, sticking with it when it gets hard, understanding the art world, envisioning and expressing my ideas. That makes it so much more rich. So when you're thinking of an art activity, it's not just for fun. It's not just to teach them how to use paint or to teach them how to use a drum. It's to help them learn these skills and also learn all of these other ways of thinking, which is really fantastic. I love Engage and Persist because most people who are not into the arts gave up, right? It's because it got hard or they felt like maybe they weren't any good at it and they stopped. And so when you're having a child try something that's new, they're stretching and exploring, then they have to engage and persist when it does get hard. And you're right, it can give them practice so that maybe when something else gets hard, they say, but I learned how to watercolor. Yes?
I just think that's kind of cool because, last week, so I'm from Cedar, but last week my sister called me and she's like, I'm having a really bad day at school, can you come pick me up? And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And my mom was like, you can't just go pick her up, like she needs to learn how to do hard things, and when she wants to get out of something, she can't just, and I was like, oh, okay, like, I won't go pick her up. And so I just think that's kind of cool because that's like a life skill that it helps you like develop, and something like if you can, like as teachers, if we can help like students and kids like develop that at a really young age, and then I mean like it'll apply to school or to work or like when they're older. I just think that's kind of cool.
Yes, and I have to say with this one, there was a movie recently and I didn't watch it, but it sounded good. It was about some band, and the band director or the conductor was super tough and super hard on the people in the band, and it almost pushed them to want to commit suicide. We definitely don't want something like that with little kids. So when you're encouraging them to engage and persist, we're doing it with empathy and kindness, right, and encouragement, to get them to enjoy the feeling of triumphing when something gets really hard. Okay, last group.
So ours was observe. So when you observe, you're taking time to notice details in your environment, and you use all 5 senses. And so our activity was to observe an item and for 2 minutes, and then to sketch an outline and then the details of what you saw. Mine's not very good, but there's a lot of lines that you can't see.
Was it a seashell?
Yeah. It had like a bunch of stuff on top of it, and that was really hard to try and depict.
And that's where develop, craft, stretch and explore, engage and persist, they all go hand in hand, right?
Kate, telling us how you've experienced the habit in this course or other arts courses. I took the other art class as well as the music and theater like most of everybody else. But it was interesting, like in the theater, we had to look at the little details whether it was a group shared reading or if he was teaching us an activity. I noticed it a lot in dance. You can't just twirl around a room. What is the thought you're trying to express to the audience? And if I was in the audience watching them, it's like, hey, wait a minute. Why did they move their hands in that particular way at that time with the music? What are they trying to tell me?
I love that because when you're the artist, you're having to reflect about it and think about your expression. And when you're you're observing yourself, you're observing other people, and when you're the audience, you're observing and trying to understand all of it, right? Awesome. Okay, keep going.
So this habit can definitely help you look for details to fully understand and use all of your senses to fully understand a concept or an item or an art thing like this.
Like in science, if you're just watching them put the stuff together in a beaker to make an experiment, are you really observing what are the different chemical properties and compounds and stuff like that? Like in a math, yeah, they did this problem, but wait a minute, did I observe that they did add, subtract, what order, and the details like that?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. You're absolutely right. So sometimes with observation, it comes before you do something, or it can come in the middle, or at the end with reflection. And if we help our students learn to observe before they start, think about if you were doing a story problem in math, and you really took time to observe. It's not just what we see with our eyes, but it's what we hear, what thoughts, what ideas are coming there. To really examine what we have in front of us, then it may be a lot easier to start that math problem out on the right foot, right? The same can be true in anything. I really love listening activities where you have to listen to music. I think we did that in the activity that we talked about with the water and the dance. You were observing that dance and trying to figure out the expression, right? Or trying to find connections between the water cycle and parts of the dance and parts of the music. Even in the music activity where we talked about how does the sound of the song go along with the figurative language that the composer and the songwriter put in there. You're observing those things together. So when we practice this through the arts, oh, and remember when we looked at the bird, obviously that was really observing. And as I read all of your comments about that, you were really talking about, I didn't think I could observe it for that long, and then wow, I noticed so much more than I thought I would notice. When we teach that to students, to slow down and observe, they become much more prepared to engage in whatever it is that they're doing. They learn better. So these studio habits of mind, there are 8 of them, are my favorite part about teaching the arts. Yes, I want kids to make art and be creative, but I want them to practice all these ways of thinking throughout their entire life, and the arts can help us do that. So if you're teaching a language arts lesson, and you decide to add dance to that, you're naturally adding, or you can open up the door to add all of these 8 ways of thinking to make their experience even richer. When you write your lesson plan, you're going to tell me how you do 1 or 2 of these things on purpose in your lesson. You can say, I'm having students practice their ability to observe, and here's how. I'm having students stretch and explore as they push themselves to try a new art form that they may not have tried before. So you'll be very clearly, intentionally picking at least 2 of these that you're going to do in your own ICAP lesson at the end of the class. Okay, that's it for today. Do you guys have any questions about studio habits of mind or about anything going on in our course? Okay, if you guys could pack everything back in the box, you can keep out anything that you created, and then maybe just put them right up here for me and I'll put them away. Thanks so much.